stopped counting calories years ago. When I stopped tracking calories, I was able to finally lose over 40 pounds and maintain a healthy weight. When I did track my calories, I felt stuck. I felt deprived, and I always used to put the weight back on again. If you've ever tried to lose weight by counting calories, you may want to hear this because there could be a better way for you. When I counted calories, I was basically looking at all of the foods that I ate at the time, everything that was in my kitchen, the pizza, pasta, the bread, chips, cakes, chicken nuggets, and I started counting the calories of those foods, and I just ate less of them. I couldn't see the problem because I was doing what all the advice told you to do. But when I look back at my behavior now, I realized that it was never going to work or be sustainable. I was only looking at calories. I was ignoring everything else that was important about my food. A diet that consists of 2,000 calories of pizza, chips, and chicken nuggets is basically the same diet as 3,000 calories of pizza, chips, and chicken nuggets. But by eating less of the things that I used to indulge in regularly, I was restricting myself and making myself feel deprived. It made me really covet and crave the portions I was used to having. And the problem is, what I was eating was basically all junk. Now I was still eating junk, just less of it. And I was trying to function on that day to day. And that was nearly impossible without me having to guzzle energy drinks and try and get past those constant feelings of hunger and general misery. This is the problem with calories. They tell you nothing about what you're eating at all. And by focusing on that number, I ignored everything else about what I was eating. And I came to learn that it actually took away my personal choice, and it was controlling me in a profoundly negative way. And here's how. No one taught me about nutrition in school or what the human body actually needs in order to not just exist, but to thrive and perform at its very best. My parents didn't tell me anything either. I had to find out all of this on my own in my 30s by reading or watching YouTube videos like this one. Calories limited my personal choice in a way I didn't really understand until ignoring them. My choice 5 years ago was between a pizza that was 800 calories or a pizza that was 1,000 calories, or between a 1,000 calorie pizza and a 1,200 calorie burger and chips. I was choosing between junk and junk. And because I didn't have the facts or the knowledge about the food I was actually eating, it was impossible for me to make any personal choice at all. My choice should have been based on what the food actually did to my body and how much nutrition it gave me. Whether it had enough protein in it to maintain my muscle or had enough vitamins in it to help my immune system function. Instead, my choice was just based on a number. And whether or not I was eating 800 calories of junk or 1,200 calories of junk, the effect was still the same. I felt tired, sluggish, I put on weight, and I was generally miserable. Knowing that you're in charge of your own decision making, that you have some agency over your life, is one of the most important human qualities. Unfortunately, calories didn't give me agency over my life at all because it made me ignore all the things I should have been looking at about my food. Now you may be thinking that counting calories has worked for you, or for someone that you know, or that influencers everywhere are finding success with it. I'll touch on this shortly, but first I want to talk about what I did instead of counting calories. When I finally got to a healthy weight and stayed there, one of the main things I did that got me to that place was that I stopped counting calories. Instead, I started looking at what I was actually eating rather than just counting numbers. The question I started to ask myself was, is this actually healthy? I started looking at ingredients lists, and I remember feeling overwhelmed at all the unpronounceable words that looked like they should belong in a chemistry set and not in my pizza. I realized that if I had to try and figure out what it was that I was actually eating, it was probably best to not eat it at all. More recently, I found that looking for sugar in ingredients lists, or one of its many names like glucose, fructose, or maple syrup, is a great way to determine if something is good for you or not. After reading so much about sugar and learning about its effects, I've come to realize that it's kind of almost impossible for something to be healthy if it has sugar in it. Now imagine if calories didn't exist. Anyone who is monitoring their food intake and trying to get into shape would instead have to look at those ingredients lists rather than just to try and rely upon some arbitrary number. And it turns out that calories aren't actually that accurate anyway. Maybe I'll talk about that in the video, but the point is that every one of us is different. This is what worked for me. It may work for you as well, but each of us responds to the same foods very differently. And there are a ton of factors that influence how our body reacts to the food that we eat. You may have spent the whole time watching this and screaming at the screen saying that calorie counting worked for me, that's great. And it does work for some people, but some studies suggest that it does not work for around 80% of us. About 80% of us will cut calories and then end up putting the weight back on again. I think it works for some of us because when we start to track our calories, we are naturally in a place where we want to be healthier and lose some weight. When I counted my calories, I was just eating slightly less of the food I used to eat. But I guess that some people, when they are actually starting to count their calories, start eating better foods at the same time, which is why they may find more long-term success. But for those 80% who lose the weight and then put it back on again, I think it's because those people did what I did. They restricted themselves and felt deprived and felt hungry all the time. And once that target weight was reached, they started eating the same way that they used to. It's what I did, and I would lose some weight and then put it back on, and lose some more weight and then put it back on again. And that cycle happened over and over again. I was only able to break that cycle when I actually changed what I ate. And if you are where I was those few years ago and are trying hard to get into shape by counting calories and are worried about missing out on your favorite foods, maybe you love pizza like I used to, I can honestly say that I know exactly how you feel. I was worried too about depriving myself of pizzas and cakes. But if you switch them for super tasty, healthy foods after a few days or weeks, those foods that you used to crave become a bit of a distant memory.